How you guys doing? This is Wes from Wesley World. I'm excited to bring you another video in collaboration with Extreme Sandbox. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to grease heavy equipment. If you run heavy equipment, this is a must-watch video, so stick around. If you like excavation, check out my channel as well. You're going to like that. I got lots of tips and tricks for you guys, so let's get to it. Alright guys, so today I'm going to be showing you guys how to grease heavy equipment. It's also going to apply to farm equipment or anything that you need to grease that has Zerk fittings. This will apply to, but I'm going to really go over the heavy equipment side because that's what I do. And I'm going to show you guys the best grease guns to use, the ones that I use, the grease that I use, and which ones to use for different applications, some accessories and some must-haves to have on hand. The best gloves that I've found, greasing machines, and why, and some extras, and I'm going to show you guys how to organize it in a toolbox like this. All right, let's get to it. So I'm going to start off with the grease guns, and I have three different types here. I got the old style grease guns where it's just a hand pump and you got a hard line here, so it's not flexible at all. These I don't recommend. I mean, this was like one of the first ones I've got. Came with the first machine that I bought, and I used it for a little bit, but I quickly upgraded knowing that this is really difficult. The problem with this is a lot of spaces you can't get this into because it's not flexible, so that's going to be difficult. I would stay away from these. Just showing you guys this. I don't recommend it. So the next step up with the manual grease guns is this here, and I'd say this is probably one of the best manual grease guns you can get. It's made by Lock and Lube. Really high quality gun. A lot of the parts are made in Europe. This part here is made in Germany. The tip is made in South Africa. I mean, a really high quality gun, and I'm going to show you why I like this manual grease gun. Well, one of the reasons is there's a little keeper there, which is nice to, you know, keep your hose from just flopping around getting grease all over. You can just snap it on there and it keeps it, which is nice. So, and already you can see why I like this one. It does have a lock, so when you push this lever, these prongs come out and lock onto the Zerk, and you can lock that on and then use both hands to hold and pump, which makes it difficult if it doesn't lock on and you're trying to pump. You almost need three hands. So this helps quite a bit. You can get into tight places. The only downside is the head is slightly big. There is some smaller options available on the market, but for the most part on heavy equipment you can get into most areas with this, and I do like this and recommend this as a manual grease gun. Again, it's made by Lock and Lube. Talking about Lock and Lube, you can actually buy just the tips. So I did buy a tip for another grease gun that I have and put it on. So this is just the tip where it locks on, which is great. So you can turn any of your grease guns into a Lock and Lube type grease gun, which is great. Speaking about Lock and Lube, they do make other tools and accessories. I do have the Lock and Lube kind of grease fitting multi-tool, which comes in handy. They have two different sizes. This is the smaller one, just for my smaller equipment, and I do like it. It does come in handy. All right, so now to the real deal grease guns that I do recommend. Would happen to be the battery powered grease guns. So you can see this one has heavy use. I use this one the most. I like it, and I mean I do recommend it. And you know, it's pretty much two-handed for everything. I mean, you can snap this on. It's got a long hose on it. You can see it's about 4 foot long. Snap that on, pump it just by squeezing the trigger there, and there you go. You got your electronic grease gun. It does have a keeper on this one, which is nice, and the batteries last quite a while on the DeWalt's. There is a few other options available. I just got the DeWalt. I just had some extra batteries, and it seemed to be working great. So I do recommend the electric grease guns. With my machines, with my big excavator that I have, to grease it completely takes about 3 tubes, so which is quite a bit. And you know, having that electric grease gun helps a lot because it has a lot of Zerk fittings everywhere. And I mean, with the manual grease gun, you're there for hours. So you want to speed up the process, and you want to make sure that you make it easy for the guys operating the machines, because if it's not easy, they're not going to do it. And greasing is one of the most important things to do on a machine daily, and you don't want to skip that. I mean, that is the most important maintenance you know, things that you're going to do on a machine. And it just, I can't push that more, how important it is. It's going to save you so much money in the end, you know, and it's gonna be worth it. So make sure you grease your machines, and I will show you guys how to do it, and I'll show you guys how to load one of these grease guns as well. But first, I'm going to go over a few other things that I have on the table here. I got some gloves. I went through a lot of different gloves throughout the years, figuring out which ones I like, which ones are the best. And these are the top two that I like. I actually like the green ones better because of the texture. They're both kind of on the pricier side, but they're totally worth it. If you're going to be greasing machines all the time, this is the way to go. Most of the other gloves I've tried, within you know, maybe 5 or 6 Zerk fittings, the gloves break already. So get high quality ones. One of them is the Venom Steel. Great gloves. It's a double thickness. It's got 2 liners in it. Got the inner liner and the outer liner, which is nice. Really thick, durable glove. I like those. The ones I like the best is these Glove Works heavy duty gloves, and they work great. It's very rare to get a hole in these. I mean, it takes a while. Really durable. They stretch really nice. It's got this texture on it, which is really good when you're dealing with grease. It gives you a lot of grip. I really love these gloves. I mean, these are the ones that I'll be buying. If I can find these on sale, I'd buy them. These are also great if you can't find the Glove Works. I got these on Amazon, so check them out on Amazon. Another little trick that I use, and a product that I use, is called a ramrod, and they're actually made for firearms, and they work really well cleaning out the grease holes where the fittings are. You can see they're pretty much Q-tips, but they're really heavy duty Q-tips. The tips don't fall apart that easy. It's on a actually a piece of wood, so it's really durable. Work great for cleaning out the holes and getting that grease fitting hole cleaned out, because you want to clean the grease fittings or the Zerk fittings before you grease it, and make sure you don't get any dirt into the joint. Another thing you want to have on hand is rags. I do get my rags in bulk in 50-pound bags from my local hydraulic store. I do recommend checking out your local hydraulic store, seeing if you can get them in bulk. Rags can get expensive, but these are shredded t-shirts, old t-shirts, and they work great. I like them. So if you see me cleaning my machine with one of these, this is not my old t-shirt, but it's just, you know, old t-shirts I buy in bulk for rags. So those work great. I got a couple different types of grease here. This is the one I use the most. It's an ultra duty EP grease, which is nice. NLGI 2, which is recommended for heavy equipment. I do recommend a type of grease like this. This is kind of an all-purpose grease for me. I like that. I also use this extreme pressure grease, which I really like. I use that on my ripper. When I'm using the ripper, I use it on a stick of the machine, and I use it on my hammer, which you do need a high temperature extreme pressure grease for that. So this is a great grease for that. I also have some NPK hammer grease that I had laying around. Just want to show you guys. So this is probably the best grease for hydraulic hammers, or any kind of attachment like that. It is really expensive. I don't buy it. I end up using this stuff here. It's a lot cheaper. You do have to add more often, but the price of this is just so high for hammer grease or hammer paste that I end up just going to that, and it works fine. It's just you got to add it a little more often. This stuff is great for hammers if you're running a hammer, if you can afford it. So that's just several different types of grease that I have. And I'm also going to show you how to organize it in a container like this. Now this container has a nice rubber seal on it, and I like that. It keeps everything sealed. You do want to keep everything in one spot, accessible all the time. You want to make it easy for you or your workers to grease the machine and have everything on hand, and they're not searching for stuff, because greasing is the most important thing you can do to your machine daily, and you want to make sure it's done right. All right, we'll get on to showing you how to load the grease gun and get to greasing. Okay, so now on to how to load a grease gun. Now first you want to get some gloves on, because you're going to get grease all over you. You want to have at least one rag on hand to wipe up any grease. First thing you're going to do, so this does have an empty tube in it, and it needs to be changed out. So the first thing you're going to do is pull the plunger out, and there's going to be a lock. So once you pull that out, it's locked there. This grease gun is pretty dirty, as you can see. It's been out in the field many times. Okay, so that's the first step. Now you're going to unscrew the head here, get this head off from the actual tube. So here's where a lot of people go wrong. They're like trying to figure out how to get this tube out, and they're over there, you know, trying to pull it out with their hands, or using their knife or anything like that. Well, you don't have to do any of that. Just let the plunger go forward. As soon as you let that plunger go forward, that grease gun pops right out, and then you can pull it out from here. All right, there you go. So that's how you take out an old tube. You can see there is a little bit of grease left. There's always going to be some grease, and that's why you want to wear gloves and have a rag on hand. Put that on the side there. Okay, so now we're going to take a full tube, and you're going to open up the end with a cap on there. So just pull that cap off. This side's going to be going up, so that's going to go in first. Well, before you do that, actually you're going to have to pull this back again to allow the tube to drop in. So that's going to go in, and then you can see you're going to have this side in. There's no way you can get actually this side in first. So if you don't know which way to go, there's only one way. So make sure that's on the top. Okay, so now that you got the tube in, you want to take the cap off. There's always going to be a little bit of grease still on there, so just kind of scrape it off and put it into that other cap there. And then now you screw the head on. All right, and then you release the plunger all the way into it. Now you can pump it, and the grease should start to come out. There we go. All right, now we can get the greasing. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys my little kit that I put together. I do recommend doing this, keeping all your grease stuff in one spot. It's going to be easier to find, easier to get the greasing done quickly, and this is how I set it up. So I got my gloves, I got my rags, my ramrods, you know, little clean supplies, extra Zerk fittings, the tools, and some grease. I do like to store the grease standing up. That's how you want to do it if you can. So try to find something where you can do that. Everything in one spot. It is a waterproof container, which I do like these. See, it's a rigid, so these are awesome. I do recommend these. Set something up like this, and it's going to make it a lot easier to get your greasing done, and it's going to make your guys that you hire, your operators, grease the machine a lot more, and give them incentive to do it right. Now, whether it's greasing a small mini excavator like this, or if you're greasing a mid-sized piece of equipment like this 259D Cat compact track loader, or if you're going to be greasing a larger excavator like this Cat 314E here, the greasing concept all stays the same. You're going to do it the same way, and I will show you how it's done. Now, before you start greasing your machine, you want to determine where all the grease fittings are, all the Zerk fittings. There's going to be a lot of hidden ones, and I guarantee you're going to be surprised that there's more than you think. So check the manual, check it really well, and go over the machine. Maybe watch some videos if you can find some, but there's always grease fittings that are hidden, and you don't want to miss those, because if you don't know they're there, they'll never get greased, and you're going to ruin that joint. and that's gonna be big costs in the end. So check it out. I'm gonna show you how to find the grease fittings on paper first, and then you want to double check on the machine as well. So in my excavator, I have a little chart here on the side, and it shows where a lot of the grease fitting spots are located on this. So it has a little grease icon there showing all the grease points. It doesn't tell me how many grease fittings there are on those areas, but it shows me where they're located. So check this if you have one of these in your cab. That helps quite a bit. Also check in the manual. It's going to show, so my manual's kind of messed up here, but so this is going to show the different spots where they're located, and also in your maintenance interval schedule is going to have how many hours you should be greasing and when you're going to be greasing different locations. So you want to read through this carefully and determine, you know, how often you should be greasing different locations. Some every 10 hours and some maybe every 100 hours. So they all differ. You don't want to be over greasing certain locations because you're going to collect a lot of dirt and dust and gunk. Everything's going to stick to the grease that's just oozing out all over, and it's going to be a big mess. So you don't want that. All right, so now that you determined where all your Zerk grease fittings are, let's get to greasing. Okay, so now that you found the grease fittings that need to be greased, you want to make sure you clean them. And you can see these are really dirty. These are recessed, so it's hard to get in there with a rag. I can kind of get in there a little bit, but I can't really get all that grease out. I'm just kind of squishing it around with all the dirt and grime and everything else. And that's where these ramrods come in handy. Now there's different sizes. I usually use little bigger ones for this, but this is what I just had on hand. But you can see how easy it is to get all that grease out and grime, and it's nice to be able to get in there. Sometimes you just got to use, 3 or 4 of them, but it gets it nice and clean. You want to clean the grease Zerk fittings before you grease it. You want to make sure all that grease is in there. You should be able to get in there with the rag a little bit now. You can start to see the fitting. All right, now there's one more to clean it up around there. All right, so that comes in handy. Again, there's different sizes. I usually use a bigger one, but you can see now how clean the grease fitting is. And that's how you want to grease a fitting. You don't want to grease it like this. This is just nasty. There's a bunch of dirt and everything in there. And so now, take your grease gun, snap that right on there. It's going to lock on. I like to just assist it because this is one-handed operation. I can assist it and hold it straight. And then when you start pumping grease in, you want to pump in, you'll hear the air coming out of the joint here, and you'll see it. So I always look in the joint, and before it oozes out to the end, I stop. So this is a pretty big machine. It's going to take a few pumps. All right, so I can see it starting to squirt out. It's getting close. All right, so I stopped. So there's grease right to the edge, which is what I want. You don't want it squirting out too much. It's just gonna get everywhere. You can see this side came out a little too far, but this side is perfect. So I want to make sure both sides get greased, and when it comes out too far on one side, just wipe it off. Don't leave it there. That's going to happen a lot depending on if you're on level ground. This bucket is not level right now, and it's putting a lot of pressure on this side compared to this side, and that's why this squirted out more. There's less of a gap here and more of a gap here. So that's one thing to be aware of, is when you're pumping grease into a joint where there's two ends, they're not going to be even all the time, and one side's going to have grease come out before the other, but you always want to make sure both sides are greased completely. So you're going to have to wipe off the excess grease from the side that comes out first. All right, so I would go around and do all the rest of them. I'd go around and clean them first, and then I'm going to grease them. If they're not too dirty, I'll just give them a wipe with a rag and then grease it. If there's too much grime in there, I'll start using the ramrods to clean them out. So now before I end this video, I want to give you a couple more tips on greasing excavators. It's one thing that a lot of guys do wrong when they're greasing the machine. You have to grease the turret and the swing motor under there, the swing bearings. There's 2 grease points on an excavator, and you're gonna have to grease both points and then turn the machine both ways. So get in the machine, turn it on, spin a couple times one way, spin another way, and then go into the halfway point and grease it again. So you would turn it to the side, grease both points again, and then do the same thing. Turn it one way, turn it the other way, and that's to properly grease the swing bearings and the turret itself. So make sure you do that. A lot of guys don't do that. Any equipment that needs to be turned like that, you want to make sure you grease it, turn it, and then grease it at different points on its axis. So that's one good tip for you guys if you're running excavators. Now there's a lot of grease fittings on this machine. Again, you want to go over all the spots. There's a bunch up there, bunch back there. On this blade here, there's a bunch. I mean, the stick area is the most crucial. This is where you're going to be greasing daily, pretty much every 10 hours. So another tip on greasing for you guys is I found that some equipment, when it's really cold, needs to be warmed up first, and you may have to run it for an hour or so to get the joints to heat up before you can grease it. So on this compact track loader, the torsion bars here need to be warmed up first before it actually takes grease. I learned that the hard way. I thought something was wrong with it when I first got the machine, tried to grease it, wouldn't take grease, and I tried it once after I was done working and it took grease. And I was like, okay. So it was during the winter time here. Where I'm at gets pretty cold, not like in the mainland. If you're in snowy areas, you're definitely gonna have this issue, so warm the machine up first. That's only for certain parts on certain machines, so that's just a quick tip for you. So make sure you got the right equipment, make sure you grease it correctly, make sure you clean the Zerk fittings before you grease, make sure you use the correct grease. It has to be a high quality, extreme pressure grease for these types of heavy equipment. And make sure you got the right gloves, because you're going to be hating it if you don't. And you know, good luck out there. That's the number one thing you can do to maintain your machine, is keep it greased. It's easy. It's preventative maintenance for any big failures on the machine. Joints and bushings and pins are expensive and they're hard to remove and to replace. So grease the machine and you will make those last a long time. So make sure you grease your machine daily. Make sure your operators are greasing the machines. And make it easy for them. Get the right equipment and show them how to do the process correctly, because you don't want your machine to be neglected, and you don't want to have to be replacing bushings and pins. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So get the right tools and get on to greasing. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave some comments down below. We want to know how you guys grease heavy equipment. If you're new to Extreme Sandbox, check out their other videos. They got lots of cool how-to videos on running heavy equipment, so don't miss that. Also check out my channel, Wesley World. I got some cool excavation videos there as well. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one.